It's March 2008, and the latest collection from style icon Kate Moss has gone on sale. All over Britain, the fashion conscious are making their way to the high street to buy a piece of supermodel style.
Kate Moss's look should be the most inaccessible thing. And yet, by launching this collection, you can get even closer to her and share in a bit of that supermodel allure. And what a blast that is.
High-end style at high street prices. That's the genius of British fashion. But it was not always this way. High fashion used to be the preserve of a small elite, and young girls aspired less to look like supermodels and more to look like their mums. Then along came Mary Quant.
There was nothing for young people. I wanted clothes that could move and could be and were sexy and young. So I was making clothes that looked quite unlike anything that was on the market.
By the end of the 60s, British fashion was known throughout the world for its young, affordable high street style, courtesy of design legends like Ozzie Clark and Barbara Hulanicki, founder of Bieber.
I think the fashion industry in the UK is the high street in a way that it isn't in other countries. There's a real democracy of fashion in Britain because people demand it.
Half a century of retail innovation and design genius has turned the everyday British high street into something unique. The world's longest catwalk.
The British do have a style genius. I think we have some of the best designers in the world. We changed the way fashion was in the 60s. We have some of the best high street stores in the world, you know, and there should be a programme celebrating it.
The Kate Moss collection has now been on sale for a week at high street giant Topshop. As shoppers snap up the latest looks, Kate, her design team and boss Philip Green are taking stock.
That was a Lauren jacket, wasn't it? Wasn't that a Lauren jacket?
We knew the Daisy dress was going to be fantastic. We sold over just under 2,000 on that, which was amazing. And also really good on the blouse as well. We're pleased with that.
2,000?
Yep. And then the scarf print dress in the silk. Was really
I saw
good
someone
too.
wearing that the other night. I went to that Paradise Lounge and this girl was wearing it and I was like, she walked in, she looked really embarrassed that I'd call her because it was like the first day.
And then on all the exclusive dresses, fantastic, the vintage
gorgeous.
sequin, yeah, and that was in the window, so...
So we're sold out already, we're not going to get more in.
No, but the idea that we learned from last time is we need to be introducing new things every other week and 2-3 weeks, and they need to see fresh and new.
Yeah.
And then blouses, really great reaction to the star prints. 2,500 on this.
These are good numbers.
Yeah.
Are they?
Butterfly
Very.
top.
So we're not sacking you just yet.
Yeah!
What do you mean, yeah?
I've still got my job then.
Yeah.
Oh, fabulous.
And finally, the star was the blazer.
Yeah, I told you
The
that last...
blazer is amazing.
I told them last time, didn't buy
Have
enough
you
of that
got one of
either.
those?
I'm gonna get one.
Oh, you better get one quick. Selling out.
Selling out indeed. This is the Kate Moss phenomenon at work. Everything she's ever worn has been examined in forensic detail by the media and public alike.
From a financial perspective, probably Kate Moss is a license to print money. You know, if you put her on the cover of a magazine, if she goes on the cover of Grazia, their circulation rockets that week. So I would imagine that the same happens for her clothes.
At the headquarters of Fashion Weekly Grazia, the editorial team are delivering their verdict on the Kate Moss collection.
Going in store. See if you can get her to talk about the collection. Yeah.
And this jacket is fantastic. And the jeans are a great cut, so that's a great statement
good
for
quality.
anybody.
And they're £35.
And they've got brilliant details on them.
I think it's actually an evening dress, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it
like
is.
tweed.
I think that there's a lot of expectation before the range came out about what it would be like and also whether she could sustain that collection. I think she's really managed to do that, and in fact she's grown in confidence steadily. You know, the last collection was the best one. It's looking like this could be even better than that. So I think it's really, really encouraging. They must be delighted over there.
The Kate Moss and Topshop alliance is so perfect, and it makes a lot of sense. Topshop is this generation's fashion label in Britain, and Kate Moss is very much the figurehead of that. And Topshop has made a lot of money out of taking inspiration from Kate Moss. So why shouldn't the two of them work together?
The alliance came about in 2006 after a chance encounter between the model and Philip Green.
I bumped into her literally in the lobby of the restaurant, and she said to me, "I'm a girl from Croydon, you know, you're a boy from Croydon, we should do business together, so well, come and have lunch with me next week and we'll figure it out." And her PA called, she came round on her own for lunch, and that's where it began.
And in May 2007, Kate Moss and her design team launched a collection largely based on the model's personal wardrobe. London's Oxford Street went Moss mad, snapping up the boho, rock chick and vintage looks on offer. But not everyone is enamoured of the Kate Moss effect.
I think the Kate Moss phenomenon is a really interesting one. I think that she's famous for being famous. All she does is stand there and be photographed. But if I were a young designer, I would be spitting mad. I'd be throwing bricks through Topshop windows, because I think it is so insulting to the whole creative force of British fashion, and it's respected by the world. What message do we give to the world? We say, yeah, we've got all these clever kids, but we like Kate.
I think Kate is perfectly placed to know about clothes. She's been in the fashion industry for 15 years. It's not that she has learnt the craft of fashion design, it's that she's inspired it amongst fashion designers throughout the world. She never said, I'm a designer, I know how to cut pieces of fabric. She was saying, these are the clothes that inspire me and I would simply like to share those with you. It's a collaboration.
But this is the idea that it'll just be a little bit of colour.
I love it.
Kate Moss's inspirations are brought to life by her design team, led by creative director Katie England.
Evening World.
First up are some prototype jackets for the autumn-winter 2008 collection that Kate requested at the last team meeting.
So you should just perhaps try that on, because I think
try that on, that one.
have a little...
It's heaven.
Yeah.
You can't do fur, we'll do feathers.
Exactly.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
See if you like the sleeves.
Maybe just a little bit smaller in the arm.
Got them.
Yeah, but still square in the body. It's nice.
Never see that.
And that's more the day gilet version to wear with jeans.
That's nice.
A bit more
That's
casual.
fun, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah, it's cute.
So they're quite special.
Yeah.
Then this was a fabric thing, wasn't it? Possibly fabric development.
Yeah, I like that, but maybe not the rose though.
I think that's too long.
But not with a rose. If we did it with the sparkle in a different, in a different design as well, not the rose. The rose makes it old lady, I think.
You saw that last time, and you said you wanted a...
Yes,
you didn't
I
want
love
it plain,
that
so
one.
that's come back.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Isn't it cute?
So we don't like that?
Kate didn't like the plain body.
don't
She
like
wanted
the
it
plain
all
body.
over.
I don't agree.
Up. No, this is so much nicer.
Yeah, but can I just say, I think they do two different jobs.
I don't like that at all.
Which?
But there's that one with the chiffon sleeves. I don't like the plain. I think it looks really...
This is...
That's nice.
Yeah, I love that. That's gorgeous, the one with the chiffon sleeves. I love this one, though. We can do it in all different colours.
Yeah.
With the Kate Moss collection, the High Street is selling the idea that even if you can't look like a supermodel, you can at least dress like one.
Pour me out another phone. I'll ring and see if your friends are home. Perhaps the strange ones in the
But the idea of models launching their own fashion label is not new. Leslie Hornby, or more popularly Twiggy, was the face of British fashion in the 60s and as much an icon as Kate Moss is today.
Finito.
Cradle of love.
In 1966, she decided to capitalize on her celebrity status and put her name to a range of clothes known as Twiggy dresses.
She'd sigh like Twig the Wonder Kid and turn her face away.
Pre me being discovered as Twiggy the model, my dream was to go to fashion college and become a designer. So in the late 60s, I was approached by a company in London to do Twiggy dresses. We did a range for about 3 years.
You look fabulous. They're sensational, the clothes. I can't believe them. I'm going to try them all on this afternoon. It's fine.
The criteria was the clothing were things that I would and I did wear, and I think that's important.
The Twiggy clothing empire afforded the model her own offices and workrooms in central London.
Oh, isn't that great? Yeah, look. A bit big again. A bit grey.
I'd probably go in there most days, actually, because I loved it, actually. It wasn't just because I had to. I was obsessed with it.
Oh, no. It's horrible.
And I loved our designers, and we go through fabrics. And also, you go through a process. You know, you have the first design meeting, and you all decide which way you're going to go, and then they start bringing fabrics to you, you know.
Pam, look. Let's go straight up. Lovely.
To show off the clothes, Twiggy organised her own catwalk.
It was rather sweet, my little shows, because my mum and dad would come and my sisters. So it was not like scary like being in a big show, and it was just in the showroom, and all the fashion journalists would come, and I knew most of them, so it was nice. And then we'd have a cup of tea. Hardly glamorous.
I think both Kate Moss and Twiggy very much embody a kind of generational aspiration, and they both very much have their own looks that girls try to copy. I think the fact that both Kate Moss and Twiggy have done their own fashion ranges says a lot about the British attitude to fashion in this country, is that we expect to be able to get it ourselves.
Although Kate Moss and Twiggy are key to the success of their collections, it's the production team behind them that makes sure their ideas are realised.
I think the misconception is that the celebrity nips in there, you know, it takes half a day and whoopity-doo, it all happens. They forget that behind them is this huge machine of production, sourcing, marketing, making that gets the thing to the door.
Part of the Kate Moss machine is Head of Design Development Geraldine O'Brien. She's just received a vintage jacket that Kate Moss and Katie England picked up in Paris.
So they love the stripe and they want to develop it into a little range of garments. So we're going to develop this into a dress on the silk base, a blouse also on the silk base, and cotton drill for the skirt.
The history in the garment, it's so Kate, isn't it, don't you think?
Oh, it really is Kate. Kate would probably wear it as it is over her jeans. And
yeah.
I mean, it's completely falling to pieces. I could really see her wearing that with her little jeans, etc. So we know what we're doing on that, Rito. Right, this is an antique jacket that Kate picked up, and it's absolutely adorable. These tassels are acetate or a rayon tassel, just mounted on a silk crepe.
Right.
We thought it was so beautiful, the shape, the length, the base cloth, the button detailing, that we've managed to replicate it perfectly, because it's so beautiful. And I mean, if you can see, you can't really spot the difference, can you?
No, very, very good.
Yeah, it's not bad, is it?
Yeah.
Basically, what we've changed on this, though, is we've put little tiny covered buttons with just a little single hand stitch through.
That's really nice.
Yeah, which looks beautiful, doesn't it? They really are gorgeous, aren't they?
Sweet, yeah.
And we've cut everything else basically spot on. And that will be in store soon.
In addition to the Kate factor, Topshop were among the first to offer services like the Style Advisor, a luxury previously only available in upmarket stores.
We want your soul.
Why should we not have service just because our spend is less? You know, the spend of a £30 top to a 17-year-old girl is just as much as the spend of a £350 top to a 40-year-old woman. So why shouldn't we give service with that?
Oh, cute though. Nice.
For many, Topshop's great pull is the way it democratizes style at the same time as appealing to the fashion elite.
When the fashion editors travel around to the collections, there's always a destination in every city where we're desperate to go as soon as we get off the plane and do a bit of retail therapy. And in London, the fashion editors who are flying in from New York and flying in from Paris and flying in from Milan, the first place they want to go is Topshop on Oxford Circus, and they're desperate to get there.
Hey, you know, it's a very interesting time here in Topshop now that all the summer sales are over.
But Topshop hasn't always enjoyed fashion credibility. Founded in the 1960s, the store had a brief heyday in the 70s before losing its way in the 80s.
When I was growing up, Topshop was seen as a kind of cheap and cheerful fashion store for teenagers, I suppose. It wasn't particularly edgy or directional. It was just quite cheap and a little bit naff, I have to say.
Naff it might have been, but not so naff that Jane Shepherdson was put off joining its staff. Once there, she was ideally placed to tackle what was going wrong.
So, had a very good week, didn't you?
Yeah, really strong.
We would have buyers' meetings every week, where the buyers would hold up these pieces in a rather derogatory manner, say, oh my goodness, look, I've sold 1,000 of this week, isn't it terrible? And I really felt that this was sort of, rather disrespectful to the customer because, they didn't seem to be proud of what they were selling to the customer.
Jane Shepherdson's respect for her customers paid off, and in 1998 she became brand director. One of her first projects was to show the world that Topshop, unlike its competitors, could do much more than just copy the catwalk.
We wanted to show that we could also launch a collection at the same time as all of the other designers, in which case we couldn't possibly have copied it from anybody because we had no one to copy from. It was coming out at the same time. So we decided to launch the Unique collection, which would show at London Fashion Week.
Topshop's Unique label is a collection created by in-house designers. The aim is to make fashion fit for the catwalk affordable to all.
Walking down the street, will I never meet her?
Actually, at the time, no high street store was showing at Fashion Week, so it was something quite exciting, but also equally quite a risky thing to do because we were putting our head above the parapet a bit, so that people could easily come back and say, what are you doing? You're rubbish, you're just high street.
In a vast industrial space, Topshop's catwalk collection is laid bare for critical attention.
I think one piece that kind of really stood out was this sort of short brown jacket with really exaggerated pointed lapels. Now that in itself is a very different detail and raises it above most random, anonymous jackets you see on the high street. And it's not a style that can be worn by a teenager. You have to be sort of 25 plus to be able to carry off that look. One other piece that's quite typical of the Unique approach to fashion is, I don't even know how to describe it, it's like an all-in-one poncho with sleeves and white and brown stripes and a hood. Now that is quite an attention-getting get-up, really, and it's not something that you generally see in Topshop, and it's not something that's going to make anyone look pretty and girly, which is generally the high street approach. But it is very brave, it's very one-off, it's very fashion-conscious.
The Unique collection is one of the ways Topshop broadened its high street appeal.
Every time you went in there was something new and it just developed better and better. Everybody at some point was wearing a bit of Topshop, whether we were 30, 40 or 50. And when you can speak to that wide an audience, even though it's totally targeted at the 18-year-old, that's a clever commercial fashion business.
Clever business sense combined with clever design, has even spread to that bastion of the British High Street, Marks and Spencer. With a little help from Twiggy, Naomi, Laura and Erin.
I like how they reach out to a huge audience. If you think of the staple bits of clothing from M&S, you've got the white vests, the underwear, the bras for women are amazing. I did my first bra fitting in M&S actually, I have to say, and I'm still in the same training bra now. But they do everything thoroughly, it's very hands-on, and I think people like that.
Over the last few years, M&S has been widening its appeal from the functional to the fashionable.
Heaven loves you. The clouds part for you. Nothing stands in your way when you're a boy.
In 2001, Marks and Spencer brought in multi-millionaire designer George Davis to create Peruna, a boutique label aimed at the style-conscious older woman. George claims to know what women want.
I'm a fantastic admirer of women. I've studied the whole ethos of women, their bodies. I also find them very attractive. That by studying them, I've got a little bit inside their mind. So that's where you could argue, in a sense, the intellectual part of fashion comes.
George Davis has had 3 major fashion hits in a row. The retail giant Next in the 1980s, George at Asda in the 1990s, and now Peruna for M&S.
Love just kissed you hello when you're a boy.
Peruna has been credited with revitalising the sleeping giant of the British High Street.
When George came to Marks & Spencer, he looked at the Marks & Spencer ranges and effectively spotted a gap. And he spotted a gap for that woman who wanted that little bit of fashion with a twist. She wanted that little bit of extra mile in it. She wanted that slightly better fabric. She wanted slightly better buttons. She wanted slightly better trims. She was prepared to pay a little bit extra for that and say, look, I've paid a few pounds extra for this, but don't I look good in it?
George knows his high street customers demand an attention to detail in the clothes they buy. He knows this by his constant trips up and down the country to see what's selling, where it's selling, and why.
Hello, George. Welcome to Liverpool.
Again.
Nice to see you.
In the Liverpool store, he meets manager Paula Doherty.
I'll show you our number one and let you see if you can best guess our number one dress last week.
For here, though,
Yeah,
this one.
It's got to be, yeah.
It's got to be this for Liverpool.
Yeah, and I think as well.
Is this one?
This is the one for last week.
Yeah.
Your price point, $39.50, and they get that necklace with that. So
that sort of shift look is really popular.
The look is a swirl. It's very feminine, floaty, and that's what they like, you know.
I've got a very good eye for proportion, eye for detail, and I don't know why I've got it. I didn't get trained in that, but having said that, my mother was the most amazing dressmaker. My auntie was a dressmaker, so maybe it's genetic.
When M&S decided to launch a series of eye-catching commercials, it was Twiggy, now in her second flush of youth, who was chosen to be the poster girl of Peruna.
I'm really proud to be part of the M&S campaign because I think George does understand what women want. Don't tell me how he does, I don't know. But he loves women and he's not only a good businessman, but his design ideas, are right on the button.
George's design ideas and meticulous attention to detailing are brought to life in his design studio in the Cotswolds. Here, George responds to the ideas thrown at him by his design team for the Autumn-Winter 2008 collection.
But I think that's the look.
That's the silhouette that we want, so...
We just need to decide on the buttons though, I think.
Have you got some here?
We've got loads of buttons here.
Okay. That's a nice button there. It's good.
It ties in with the lace around the neckline, so...
Yeah. We've always been a fantastic tailoring house, Peruna, so we've got to go for the fantastic value, but actually it's got to be really fantastic the place people want to buy it.
I think George is one of our retailing giants. I mean, what he's done through Peruna M&S is extraordinary. The man is obsessed, that's why he's good.
That's fine. but it wouldn't have been fine if we hadn't had this detail here.
Yeah.
Because what I don't want is to go sludgy.
No. Yeah.
To be that successful, you've got to be obsessed. And I think that's why that team is so good, because they are obsessed and they work really, really hard.
This is good, yeah.
We've got all these kind of things, and this one's from the Far East. And that, again, is patching the tweed, patching the lace, giving surface texture.
Is there any trouble with this? It doesn't feel nice, does it?
Yes. I mean, it should be.
Well, we've got to look at that, because I do want it to feel beautiful. My belief in quality, my belief in making shopping easy without being boring. In other words, I'd put a collection together that a woman could go in, see a whole colour palette, and mix and match it, play with it. And also, I used to call it affordable collectibles. And of course, I got the temperature right.
I think when people look back on this decade on the British High Street, the two major figures are going to be Topshop and Marks & Spencer. Marks & Spencer is extremely important because it caters to an older customer.
Today, the British High Street cuts across both age and class, the true democratisation of style.
People no longer in Britain wanted to have their noses pressed up against the glass and watching a privileged elite enjoying what they felt they couldn't have, whether that be in terms of their careers or their holidays or their fashion.
What lay behind this opening up of fashion was a business-savvy marriage of high design and low cost. Designer looks had never before been this available. In fact, the pioneer of the whole high street revolution didn't at first find that style and business were natural partners. Her name was Mary Quant.
What I love about the whole Mary Quant thing was that it was utterly, utterly non-professional. They had no idea about how you go to a wholesaler and you buy the fabric and you cost the fabric and you work out the selvage, the lining, and sort of then made it a proper price, which gave you a proper margin. And I love that sort of inspired ignorance.
I used to go to Harrods to buy the fabrics. Harrods had a wonderful haberdashery department, and they also had the best possible credit. And in fact, they didn't get cross for at least a year about the bills. So I bought all the buttons and ribbons and all the pieces at Harrods.
With Harrods as her fabric supplier, in 1955, Mary Quant opened her first shop on London's King's Road. It was called Bazaar. Inside were clothes designed by Quant for a largely ignored species called the young.
What I hadn't at first realised is that the look was something that people wanted all over the place. Everything was about movement, sexiness, and being alive and being young, because we were.
I can remember going shopping with my mum in my early teens, and you either went to your mum's shop, department stores, or there were kids' clothes. There weren't teenage clothes.
Mary Quant changed all this with a look that was simple, neat and informal. Inspiration came from children's clothes, short skirts, knee socks and coloured stockings. She used fabrics like gingham, tartan and flannel in strong, bold colours.
I loved using the colours that weren't used. Brilliant colours like Coleman's mustard yellow, which was in itself thought quite shocking. By this time, I think I'd learnt there's something very, very sexy about channel seams down there, sort of just bursting into pleats opening up as is actually a crucial point, which I think is what makes that dress so damn sexy.
What was exciting was she was producing clothes that not only weren't in any way like what Mum wore, but Mum couldn't wear them. And that was the great difference.
Part of the excitement came from Quant's experiments with unusual new materials.
The most exciting of all was PVC. Nobody'd seen anything that looked like this PVC. And I had a whole collection in black and white and Coleman's mustard and ginger in PVC, and I called it my wet collection. I think the fabric's very sexy, the whole shininess, you want to feel it straight away. I mean, I love using childish elements, like having the buttons down the back, you know, because children's clothes, someone else dresses them, but equally, you know, happens to grown-ups too sometimes. And sou'wester hats. Again, it was bringing in this kind of child thing with the grown-up thing, and a Christopher Robin sort of thing, and the childish smock shape with the gathers on the shoulder. Ah, I still like it.
By the mid-60s, everyone was wearing the Quant look, including Twiggy. Designers were now celebrated like pop stars, and London took over from Paris as the world's fashion capital, with the Quant genius symbolizing the swinging city. "30 years later, swinging London was rebranded as Cool Britannia. Fashion icons like Kate Moss and designers such as John Galliano and Alexander McQueen had once again brought British style to international attention. And sitting at the centre of this designer boom was the British High Street.
We started working with designers back in the 90s. First of all, to allow our customers to be able to buy designer collections that perhaps they wouldn't have been able to buy because they couldn't possibly afford them. So it was a way of allowing our customers a glimpse, if you like, at a different aesthetic, a different style.
As collaborations with designers became more natural, high street chains like Topshop were able to attract the best new talent, such as Jonathan Saunders, seen here showing at New York Fashion Week.
We picked up on Jonathan Saunders about 2 years after he left St. Martin's. He was picked for the New Generation sponsorship, and one of his first collections had the most incredible graphic prints that really stood out, and I think all of the fashion press picked up on it and said, this guy is going to be really something.
See me in my heels and ting. Dem tricks that we're hip and ting. Jude on dinner and ting. We're having going and ting.
But there's a whole other element of fantasy which fashion is, which is what I love to do, and I think especially with this collection, it's much more about detail, much more structured than I've ever really done before. The panels on this dress, you know, there's long graphic lines, it elongates the body. By using this kind of chocolate brown leather, it's a much more kind of rustic feel to it, I suppose. Usually I reference, you know, like Corbusier or the Bauhaus or something like that, and I think about in that way how I could translate that into a print. This is a workwear inspired shape, but it's disguised almost like camouflage with this print that I drew from like the inside of crystals.
Saunders has caught the attention of arguably the most influential figure in fashion, the British-born editor of American Vogue, Anna Wintour.
Well, I like those very streamlined shape that he does. I like his tailoring. It's a sexier vision, I think, that he has, and less about dressing up than some of the British designers. It's more grown up.
Saunders' catwalk collections may excite the fashion press, but it's his work for the high street that will reach a wider group of admirers.
You know, there's a very youthful spirit about Jonathan, and you could argue that it's best appreciated by the young, and they can't afford the designer prices, but they can buy into Jonathan Saunders at Topshop.
In East London, Jonathan Saunders and his team are preparing a new diffusion line for Topshop, where his high-end designs will be reinterpreted for the high street. Topshop head buyer Karen Downey has come to discuss the look and the cost implications.
We don't want it to be overly constructed and overly worked, and you know, the aesthetic of what I do usually is quite pared down and simple anyway.
Yeah.
But we have to think a little bit about the construction for a high street store
Exactly.
compared to what you
How we
have for
can
your
translate
collection.
it.
Yeah.
So I brought out a couple of quite simple pieces here, which could translate quite easily, you know, because it's expensive fabrics that have been used, but you can work on that anyway. You know, if you imagine this dress with the body in black, and then we use our strong colour of blue on the shoulder and keep the black stripe.
But also that they can recognise it as definitely one of your...
Yeah, would you still line the dress? Maybe not.
I think probably we'd have a look at what it's like unlined first.
To keep the price down.
Yeah.
You're putting your product out there to a wider audience, so you need to kind of please more people in a way. I think you always have to take that kind of thing with a pinch of salt though, because if it does affect your design process too much, you end up kind of oversimplifying or the dumbing down of what you're all about, and it's kind of, you've got to be brave as well.
Obviously the finishing is really, really fine on these, and there's been a lot of work going into finishing this in that way.
Yeah, which we probably wouldn't finish it in the same way.
Right,
So
but we could get
just
close to
quite
it. We could get
close, yeah.
something near to it.
I think it's a two-edged sword in that it's supporting the design process, it's appreciating young British talent, but it's also bringing to the forefront, you know, like that, how you can gain those pieces for a low price. So all of those things made it really good on a long-term basis.
While Jonathan Saunders has accepted the compromises of working for both the high end and the high street, one of the originators of this transition found it slightly more trying.
I'm not interested in the cost of a garment, really, at all. I'm more interested in how it looks on a person and how it makes the person feel.
His name was Ozzie Clarke, a British-style genius, if ever there was one.
You got me shaking, oh, you got me high.
I just observe women, things they like to do. The woman changes constantly, and then you just try and make clothes that fit in with that way of thinking, clothes that show her to her best advantage. Clothes that make her feel very confident, because if she's confident, then she looks beautiful and radiates and everything.
Lancashire-born designer Ozzie Clarke studied fashion at the Royal College of Art. Soon after graduating, he joined forces with fellow designer Alice Pollock and began creating designs for her Chelsea boutique, Coram.
He was fascinated by the way fabric draped. He was technical, and he really loved the technical side of it. And he could mix it with those wonderful big wide skirts and everything else, and it was a sort of slightly hippie-ish kind of feel about things.
Clarke was a master cutter whose technical skill and knowledge of fabric produced clothes that flattered every woman who wore them.
I've been in fashion for 30 years. Never once have I thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun to just slip on a little lady's dress and see how it feels? But I think that if I were going to, I'd probably, possibly choose something from Ozzie.
Cold fire, you've got everything but cold fire. You will be my rest in peace, child. I moved up to take a place.
In 1966, he began to collaborate with the print designer Celia Birtwell. 3 years later, they married. Their work together was to be one of the most successful partnerships in fashion history, with Ozzie designing the clothes and Celia designing the prints.
I suppose my addition was a sort of fantasy. I sort of added a kind of feminine whisper. I think it was a great unison, actually. I think it really... Even though he wouldn't really talk to me about what I was doing, I'd say, do you like this? And he'd just say, oh, do what you want. So it was really up to me what I produced.
Celia's prints are so original. They're very, very, very beautiful. They really are works of art. And if you wed that to the fall of the crepe that Ozzie was so good at cutting, and the combination was world beater.
This is one of Ozzy's most cleverest and famous dresses. It's called Ziggy. It's all in silk chiffons, obviously Celia's print, which are always beautiful. This is a little rouleau, another one here. You do a little loop in order to button it up. Our stuff we did in chiffon was really beautiful. And he was very clever. He understood a woman's body completely. He knew where to put a fullness, where to be straight, and how it would look. No matter what size you were, even if you were 10, 12, 14, very slim, this would still look fabulous on you because it would hang straight if you were small. And then if you were a little fuller, you didn't have to size it, it just moved out.
Ozzy and Celia launched their clothes in spectacular style in outlandish catwalk happenings which used music and dancing models for the first time. Fashion shows would never be the same again.
I looked under chairs, I looked under tables, I tried to find the key to 50 million fables. They call me the seeker.
He was so keen to make it into a real happening and a real occasion that he would work the music out with several DJs who would be his pals.
I won't get to get what I'm after till the day I die.
The clothes were sublime and it was like a real theatrical experience.
But despite his glittering admirers, business was not Ozzy's strength. By the late 1960s, Coram was deeply in debt and was taken over by the fashion house Radley.
Ozzy was a disaster. He hadn't a clue about money, and he was totally disorganized and really had to be sort of forced to work and everything. And yet, he produced marvelous things.
When people talk in terms of how much a garment costs to be made up, I don't understand it, really. I know about dressmaking, about making clothes, and that's what I love doing.
In 1968, Ozzy and Celia began designing for Radley. Working for the high street with its need to control costs was not to Ozzy's liking.
When I give them the sample, then it's gone, and then I forget about it, and they do things like, you know, really ghastly things that I just close my eyes to, because you have to, because they want garments to sell for 60 shillings. I mean, 60 shillings is ridiculous. That's a yard and a half of fabric sometimes for me.
Most designers actually will water down something they're doing because they'll reach a much bigger audience. I mean, Radley produced an enormous amount of clothes that were from the Diffusion line. I'm always seeing them. They pop up all over the place. I mean, I can't believe how many prints I did that I'd forgotten, and then suddenly, you know, you think, oh, it's another one. And a lot of them I can't remember.
Right, everyone used to think that Ozzy Clark for Radley maybe wasn't as wonderful as Ozzy Clark for Coram, but in actual fact, this is a beautiful dress. It's crepe, really nice shape. You've got this nice opening to show off your midriff. You've got Celia print. This is Floating Daisy, Celia print. Done in green, it's very strong and striking. One of her most favourites, I think. Because this is for Radley, the top is made with just the print, whereas if we made it for Coram, we would have probably have made it all the way through. The print would have been quite expensive. But again, regardless, it was a really good seller. It sold 40,000 dresses. So Mr. Radley must have been very pleased.
Despite Ozzy and Celia's reservations, the Radley Diffusion line still demonstrated their genius at work. Their sensual and romantic look would become a modern classic and has now been rediscovered by a new generation. In 2005, Kate Moss appeared on the cover of Grazia magazine wearing a dress called Little Rock, designed by Celia Birtwell for a new Topshop range.
We sent a sample of this dress to Kate, I think she was shopping in Topshop at the time, and she wore it with black tights and a pair of boots.
That's right.
And she was snapped, and she was on the front of Grazia magazine.
That's right.
The whole sort of frenzy started there, really. We had calls from the press, we had waiting lists in the stores of people who wanted to buy it, and everybody wanted to know where this dress was from, and we knew, certainly, that your designs would sell.
I love the idea that Celia has been rediscovered. Suddenly people have realised that good design, particularly good design of pattern and fabric, can be timeless.
Now, something else that's very distinctive about the way you work is you always create your prints onto figures and onto dresses instead of just creating the print alone. Is that something you always do?
If you're creating an image for a dress, it's so much easier and better to put it on a proportion which is what hopefully it will turn out to be.
Yeah. So the style of the dress, is that something that you came up with, or you worked with some of the Topshop designers at the time?
I showed them my sketchbooks. I also found different garments and shapes that I liked. And we did about, I don't know, 6 or 8 prints.
Yes.
Well, Celia's very talented, got creative eye, been doing it long time. And therefore the combination of Topshop and her is a perfect illustration of how you can reinvent something on a very different stage.
Reinventing the past has become a staple on the British High Street as stores have discovered the vintage look.
We realised quite early on that although we didn't want to copy current designers, that actually there was a wealth of design detail in vintage pieces that one could plunder with gay abandon, really.
A print like that, do you think that's something you want to do?
I think the colours probably...
Topshop's Karen Downey and designer Emma Farrow are at a vintage clothing supplier, seeking inspiration for a new range based on the iconic look of Bieber, one of the 60s giants of high street style.
A dress in here that's got those heart-shaped buttons, which is really cute.
Oh, they're great. Yeah,
and it's got a lot of those real typical features.
It has, and the pocket detail's fantastic.
The pocket's great.
Yeah,
and this,
lovely.
you've got your typical little Bieber shoulder.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, that really narrow silhouette on the top. And I just love this, this sleeve shape is a real sort of signature.
I was going to say, that's a real typical Bieber sleeve.
So do you think we should take this, I think, don't you?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think we'll take that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bieber was founded by fashion designer Barbara Hulanicki and her husband Stephen Fitzsimon. A shop as well as a label, Bieber was an Aladdin's cave of constantly changing fashion.
The beauty of being a designer for a shop is that you don't have to produce a new collection every season. Our staff always evolve to keep them coming in, for fresh stuff.
News of Bieber spread to the suburbs of northwest London and a young Twiggy.
We heard the rumour of this shop off of High Street, Kensington, and we had to go and see. And once we found it, we were like, we were
I used to see
unstoppable.
And the shop was full.
We could come down with £2 or £3 and get a dress and probably a pair of shoes.
Yes.
And it was like heaven going into Bieber.
Bieber was an affordable one-stop fashion emporium. Secretaries and society girls jostled for space as they snapped up everything from feather boas to makeup. All designed by Barbara and her team.
Isn't that one of the early dresses?
Yes, do you remember that?
Oh, I do. I had one, I'm sure. But that was very new, that back, wasn't it?
Yeah, and lyrics too. It was a little
and outrageous.
Yes, that was amazing stuff. From 50s, 50s.
You'll see that.
T-strap, yeah.
You go around the high street now and there'll be half a dozen dresses
Do you think?
like that.
People didn't have bosoms in those days.
No, well, I certainly didn't.
Flatten them. Yes, you certainly did.
I certainly didn't.
The success of the store meant that it was forced to move every 2 years into bigger and bigger premises. By 1974, thousands of customers a day were flooding through the doors, attracted not just by the fashion, but by the atmosphere and the very low prices.
People used to meet at Bieber, and it was so fantastic that it was a given they were going to buy. You know, it became such a place where everybody met, and it was a social meeting place for a tribe, a type of fashion person, you know, who wanted a club, a fashion club.
I think by the big store we were number 2 after Tower of London. Buckingham Palace was 3rd.
That's amazing.
Yes, on the tourist map.
So I've got here a pair of amazing trousers. I mean, this was so new. Look at those.
So Hollywood.
But they're
Hollywood.
brilliant. High-waisted,
Yes.
slit up the front, but look how wide they were.
Yes.
So talk us through your inspiration for that.
Yeah, no, but it would have evolved from trousers. Sort of.
So you'd have had a
already
set,
there was a pattern like this, and it was selling awfully well. And it had a seam here, so we just split it open, just to take it further.
And
It
how
was
new
part of
it
the,
must have been. I mean,
Yes.
I bet these sold really well, didn't
Yes, and but we never produced sort of more at that stage than 200-300
of anything.
Yeah, because just to keep people
Yeah.
coming back.
I mean, I always say to people that you, and I believe this 100%, that you were the person who changed high street fashion in England forever. And it was you who gave fashion to young teenagers at an affordable
Out of
price.
my own despair.
But without you, wouldn't be the top shops today. There just wouldn't be.
I never saw why, just because something was inexpensive, couldn't be well designed.
No, I agree.
Bieber fired the gun that started the fast fashion revolution. From now on, there'd be an expectation that clothes on the high street would be well designed, accessible, and affordable to all. But there is a downside. Fast fashion today has become increasingly like fast food. As the competition has escalated, clothes have become so cheap we now gorge on them. But are we about to gag?
What's happened in fast fashion and value fashion is that the consumer, it's like eating so many hamburgers, there's only so much that you can take. It's quick turnaround in the shops every 2 weeks, changing the next look, changing the next look. Here it is in a new colour, here it is in a new shape. But I think what will start to happen is people will start to have a conscience, start thinking about how much they need in their wardrobe. And I think we'll start to have kind of ethical movement into high street fashion.
A sentiment that is even echoed by Jane Shepherdson, who many credit as one of the inventors of the contemporary British high street.
If you buy a T-shirt for £2, obviously you're not paying for it, but somebody is. You know, the person that actually made that T-shirt is clearly being paid an extremely low wage, and probably not a living wage in order to make it. But nobody likes to be driven by guilt. You know, we need to make people feel good about what they're buying. What's sad at the moment is that actually consumers are not being offered exciting, interesting, well-designed, fair trade or ethically produced product, and that's a real shame, and that's, I think, where the industry needs to put its socks up and say, right, we need to put better design in. It's not enough to say, well, you should buy this because the people who made it are now being treated well. I know it looks like a sack, but, you know, honestly, it'll make you feel good, because it won't.
To address this, Shepherdson, in collaboration with Oxfam, has begun an ethical fashion awareness campaign. Enlisting the help of the best of young British design talent, including Jonathan Saunders and Christopher Kane, Jane Shepherdson and Oxfam are attempting to show how recycling and refashioning second-hand clothes could provide a stylish and ethical alternative to fast fashion.
Second-hand clothes can easily be fashionable where, number one, everything goes in cycles, and the cycles are getting faster and faster and faster now in terms of something that was fashionable 3 or 4 years ago now actually looks quite fashionable again. So that happens. But equally, you can rework second-hand clothes and restyle them into something that is a little bit more up-to-date. But equally, a lot of people who buy second-hand clothes are buying them because they don't want to look like everybody else. They don't want to be following slavishly the trends of the moment.
At the photo shoot launching the Oxfam campaign, the designers unveil their restyled clothes.
Jane is like a water diviner without the little stick. She's got a real fingertip sense for the zeitgeist. And her focus on ethical fashion and her project with Oxfam is fantastically timely.
One of the most arresting of all the designs is a glamorous 1920s-style evening gown by Christopher Kane. Using his trademark crystal applique, Kane has created a stunning new design on a vintage dress.
I really love crystal, and I really thought...
Yeah.
Really quite hot and sophisticated, yeah. And the crystal really makes more of a statement as well, which is great.
Yeah. It really looks like a Christopher Kane dress.
Does it?
It has your signature to it. I suppose certainly the use of the crystals
yeah.
is something that you've become known for.
It was kind of to try and make a statement but not go over top.
Yes.
Because you know how you can go a bit crazy. And
of course, yes.
It's quite a superhero feel, and that's quite current for me as well.
Yeah.
And everything. So,
so you didn't have to change this.
I didn't really want to change it, so I just went with the seams of the dress, and
Yeah.
obviously it's the bias cut, so it's going to fall in a really great way.
It looks so modern now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It really does.
Restyling a dress is one thing, but remodeling our buying habits may take more than an awareness campaign. The British craving for cheap fashion will be hard to cure, however ethical the cause.
I don't know how quickly we're going to say goodbye to fast fashion, because we've got a young consumer that's all they know, and that's what they've got used to, and that doesn't just get wiped out overnight. But I do think it's not seen as clever as it was.
For the time being at least, the British high street machine appears to be carrying on regardless, with one of its biggest names now expanding onto the global stage. Philip Green is taking his Topshop empire to America, with a new superstore about to open in New York.
This year will be about he who dares wins. You're going to have to tick every box there is. There's going to be no room for a cross. It has to be all ticks. And hopefully, we're capable of playing on that stage.
You still expect to take a lot of money on one floor. Which floor? A floor like this.
Phillips found a location on Broadway, and I think we're all very interested to see how that British sensibility can translate. But you know, I think Philip's super smart, and the clothes that he has in the store are great, and I can imagine it would be a huge success.
We've bought the ticket, we're in the race, we're going to build the building, and we're going to roll the dice. And it's going to be about 24/7 getting it right. And we're not going to dilute it, we're going to put that building on wheels, and we're going to wheel it out in New York. And we'll either be good enough or not. And the customers will tell us.
And the fashion vibe continues online at the British Style Genius website, with loads of information about the different looks and designers from tonight's show. Music next here on BBC Two as Coldplay hang out with Jules.